not saying they're better, but just with the storyline, it just makes it a little bit more intriguing. We did talk about it last week, but here's where I'm going to throw a quote, and then we'll allow you to give your takes on the whole situation, because I'm sure everyone wants to hear from you. But Javier Mendez, of course, he's the coach at AKA, he says that they expect, the Islam camp expects Volkanovski to be much more aggressive this time out. He said Volkanovski's going to do more. He's going to take chances. He's going to take more chances than last time. He's not going to be worried about the takedowns because he obviously survived the ground game last time. And he also did his best work on the ground, not in the stand-up. So he's not going to be afraid of anything. He went on, but we'll leave that there. Get to that quote in a minute, but just in general, Anthony, thoughts on all of that? And give it to me, bruh.
So I'm of course I'm excited about Islam versus Volkanovski. I don't know who couldn't be. I am disappointed, and just hear me out. I'm disappointed that Volk isn't getting a full camp, because then there's always going to be excuses, and not necessarily from Volk. I don't think he's the type of guy that's going to give an excuse, and I don't think that Islam is the guy that's going to give an excuse either if he were to lose. But there's always going to be an asterisk no matter who wins. If Islam wins the fight, then everyone's going to be saying, Volkanovski didn't have a full camp and he wasn't ready. He stepped in to save the show because he's such a warrior, but he wasn't as prepared as he could have been. And then it's going to diminish no matter what happens, it's going to be a hard fight probably for both guys. So it's going to diminish whatever Islam does that entire fight. And then they're going to people are going to start going back to his record. They say, 3 out of his last 5 or 3 out of 6, whatever it's been, have been guys on short notice. So they're going to put an asterisk by it. If Volkanovski wins, and the people are going to say, well, Islam was preparing for a completely different type of fighter, different body type. He wasn't prepared to go 5 hard rounds, because let's be honest here. I don't think that anyone expected Charles Oliveira to go 5 rounds really hard. It's just not how Charles fights. He's more or less a 3-round guy. He fights like he's shot out of a cannon and just puts his foot on the gas and goes. So I don't suspect if you're fighting Charles Oliveira, you're worried about rounds 4 and 5, him pushing the pace. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I just think that that's how we as fighters kind of look at Charles. So Volkanovski, even on a couple weeks notice, can probably go 5 rounds pretty hard. So I just think there'd be excuses for Islam, and I didn't want any of that. I just let's go in, let's find out who the better guy is, and let's move on. And I just hope that we can do that. I just don't know that that's going to be the case. So I love the fight. I just wish they had a full camp for both guys, for their sake. To be honest, I think I like the Khamzat fight way better now. I think that I didn't really take the Paulo Costa fight very serious. If I'm being honest, I don't know how serious Costa is taking it. I don't know why I feel like that. I just don't.
Well, because he never commits. He misses weight. He's messed around. He's pulled out of so many fights, and he seems more intense on being a troll. That said, he does show up.
Yeah,
with the ability to go.
Right, but one time he showed up at 205 for a middleweight fight. You know what I mean?
But he went 5 rounds.
But he went 5 hard and looked good. So
yeah,
I do, and I mean this with the most respect. I'm going to clarify that. Paulo Costa went to a pretty tough decision with a way past his prime. Yeah, with a way past his prime, beat up Rocco, and a guy who was having a hard time taking damage.
Can we go to that one in a minute and just keep on Islam and Volk?
Yeah.
What you said,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I was just giving you a broad what I thought of the news that day.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I apologize then, because we'll get to that fight in just a sec. I think what you said there, you do have a point about the excuses. I think, because the reality is Volkanovski has stepped on 10 days' notice. Mm-hmm. And if you wanted to paint a picture, if you were trying to make excuses, you could say, well, he had surgery 3 months ago. His wife had a baby a month ago, and he's taking it on 10 days' notice. But the reality is of the situation, nobody had a gun to his head. Now,
Right.
granted, you can formulate that, and there will definitely be some gravitas to those statements. But the reality is he chose to do it. And why is that? Well, because he feels that he can win. He feels that he's in shape and he's ready for the test. I watched the first fight back a few days ago, last week, and I've changed my mind. I think Volkanovski won the first fight. I really do.
Yeah, he could have.
And I mentioned this last week. I think he's going to come into this one even more confident because he hasn't got this big picture of this Dagestani wrestler, the new Khabib, coming after him, and how good is his wrestling? How strong is he? And all the rest. Because the unanswered things when you go into a fight, that's always what gives you the anxiety, right, Anthony?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when people say, this guy hits so hard, you're like, shit, I can't take one of these shots. And all of a sudden, bang, he connects. And you're like, hold on.
That wasn't that bad.
I've been hit harder than this before. And then you clinch up and you're like, hold on a minute, he's not that strong. So all those questions are already answered. So I think Javier Mendez has a really good point there, because Volkanovski is going to go into this one more aggressive. He is going to swing. I don't think he will be quite as concerned about the takedowns. And I think he will swing because he's probably not going to be, he's just not going to be in as good a shape as what he was back in February, right? So the game plan's got to be try and knock him out. If you don't knock him out, okay, fight to a decision, but try and knock him out. And that's kind of the game plan I had against Rockhold, because I was like, I can't go 5 rounds. Do you know what I mean? I've got to swing. Otherwise I'm going to be gassed by the third. I'll make it through 5, but I'm going to it's going to be a shit show in that last round.
Yeah, 4 and 5 are not going to be fun.
I'm not going to be having a good time there. And because there's going to be no pressure, because he's getting all the respect for stepping up at last minute, and because he's the pound for pound number 1, and the last fight was razor close, and you can spin it both ways. I think now after rewatching it, Volkanovski actually won the first fight by a very close margin. I still think Volkanovski, I don't know, we'll give our picks on Thursday, but I still think it's a tough fight for both men.
It's a really tough fight for both men. And I think you talking about the unknowns and all those questions being answered, I think that's the biggest storyline in the fight. The hardest part about the fight is leading up to it. All the questions and the anxieties and the worries, and then you get in there and all the shit you were worried about sometimes was not even an issue, and the shit that you weren't worried about is now a problem. So he's already figured that out. He knows what to avoid. He knows where he was successful. Maybe even in those small, there's things that make a big difference that like the fly-by fan won't think about when they're up against the fence. And the whole time you've been in training camp, like you got a hand fight, you got to work in the clinch here. And then you realize that the hand fight isn't that big of a deal. It's maybe dealing with the underhook, like little adjustments right there where you spent all camp making sure I got to hand fight my training partners. I got to peel the wrists, when really the thing you should have been focused on was like dealing with the underhook and the leverage there. That little adjustment, it changes whether or not you get your back off the fence or not. I mean, those little things that, like, Volkanovski has all that information now, and those aren't a lot of those things aren't things you can change. Like you kind of just attack on the fence the way you attack on the fence, especially because Islam wasn't expecting to fight Volk. So it's the same things that maybe Volkanovski has to make adjustments to. Islam only has 10 days as well.
Yeah. No, he does only have 10 days, but I will say this though, and again, this is like can be perceived as not giving Islam the credit, which, listen, I give him all the credit in the world, and I have tremendous respect and admiration for what he does inside there, because the way that he generally beats people and goes through them, it's a thing of beauty. But every time we have a training camp, we're trying to become the best version of ourselves. We're trying to take everything to the next level. Your strength, your cardio, your jiu-jitsu technique, your wrestling, your striking, and all the rest of it. And sure, you do come up with a game plan and a strategy based upon your opponents. When you're at this level, you do. But ultimately, it's still a fight at the end of the day. Right. You're still going to have to deal with Charles Oliveira and his unorthodox striking and his crazy aggression and his submissions on the ground. So yeah, I still think a lot of that carries over. But anyway, Craig Jones is the coach of Volkanovski, or one of his coaches. He's been talking a bit of making some outlandish statements. Sounds like you've seen some of them, Anthony.
Yeah, well, and Craig, that's just Craig.
Yeah, he says, where do I start here? Talking about, he said, it makes him a man, talking about John Jones. Oh, no, talking about Volkanovski. It makes him a man that disproves Sambo. That will trump his legacy in this sport because we wasted another martial art. Most martial arts were killed in 1993 with the inauguration of the UFC, and I get his point. Somehow Sambo has still limped and lingered on to 2023. Oh God. So Volkanovski kills Sambo, and we get to stop hearing about this Russian dancer. Then he goes, the last fight we spent a ton of time on submission defense. Obviously, that's a waste of time because, as we learned, Islam doesn't know any submissions. He just holds onto the back for 20 minutes. This time, we'll probably get out of the body triangle. There was no submission threat at all. So Volk was just chilling, getting energy back, punching him in the head. This time, he'll get out of that. And then lastly, before we move on, he says, we've heard about this catch wrestling. We've heard about Sambo. We've never seen it work. If Islam gets a submission, that's a jiu-jitsu submission. If he gets a takedown, that's a judo takedown. If he shoots a double leg, that's a wrestling move. So for me, Sambo is a myth. It doesn't exist.
Craig is a maniac.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I don't know it.
I don't know that I necessarily completely disagree. I don't know a lot about Sambo, but it does seem like it's wrestling, judo, and jiu-jitsu and kind of MMA all rolled into one. But I don't know enough about it, I guess, to give a true opinion. But I do think that he's one of the best jiu-jitsu players in the entire world. I think he's a fantastic coach. I've trained with him. He's very good at what he does. And I don't think that he's wrong on his assessment of Islam's jiu-jitsu in terms of its effectiveness on Volkanovski. I think if Brian Ortega, could Islam catch Volk? Of course, anybody can get caught. I mean, when you're that deep in that many submissions with a guy like Brian Ortega, I think your jiu-jitsu defense is probably pretty on point.
Yeah, but I think I said this last time, and I'll say it again. How do you choke a man out that has no neck?
It's hard. That's what I mean. It's hard.
Is a body and a bowling ball on top of it. You know what I mean? Where the neck should be, there's a bowling ball of a head. You know what I mean? There's no neck to choke.
No.
And to be fair on what Craig Jones is saying now, of course, he's stirring the pot a little bit and he's doing his thing. But in the world of martial arts, there's techniques that work, and they will be picked up and accrued and used and formulated and changed and used in different styles and different systems. A front kick is a front kick, whether that's kickboxing, Thai boxing, taekwondo, karate. There's lots of different styles. A rear naked choke, okay. Maybe I think it would have evolved in Japanese jiu-jitsu 5,000 years ago, and now it's used in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm sure it's some.
Yeah, the technique is the same. We just call it this. It's just called.
It just drifted across the continent over to Russia at some point,
or limped along till
limped along. I mean, listen, anyone can learn a rear naked choke. You can take somebody. We see it all the time. People, it's very on trend these days. People want to get choked out, like Dylan Daddish choked out some girl.
Yes, the OnlyFans
the boxer or whatever, the OnlyFans girl. He choked her out and choked her out unconscious, and then she's like, "Oh my God, that's better than MDMA or something, or ketamine or whatever."
Is that what she said afterwards? I
she said that's better than drugs. She's like, "I came around, I was all lightheaded. It's better than any drug I've tried," or something like that.
Yeah,
the point I'm making is though, you can tell anyone.
Away $20 a piece.
Let's go. What you do, get your arm, put it around someone's neck, put it on the bicep, and put the other hand behind the head, and then squeeze a little bit. Right. There you go. It's not hard to learn. It's utilizing that and executing that